Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Teen Wolf, as well as the latest episode of Aftermath. Like always, if I end up talking about something that you don't want to hear about, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time slots and when I start talking about each of the respective shows that I'm talking about, so that you can skip to whatever it is that you want to listen to. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the premiere of Teen Wolf. Super excited. I was so happy about this. I kind of went into this episode a little spoiled because the whole premise kind of got thrown at my face because I kept trying to avoid it, but I couldn't help it. I was so enticed by it. I was and because I was every once in a while I'll pop in on the marathon. They were marathoning the second half of season 5. And, well, I guess if you want to get technical about, season 5B, if you want to really label it and everything. But, I couldn't help but grasping stuff. Because seeing those episodes just kind of, revigorated me. I was just it got me super hyped for tonight's episode. And it was not a disappointment. We kind of see the status of where everything is. You have Stiles and Scott kind of, trying to be, do their thing. They're trying to stop some guy who's a thief, but all he stole was helium. And it kind of gets Scott being like, well, Stiles, it's they have it under control. He's like, wait, what are you telling me? It's they don't need us anymore. It's of course they need us. This town would fall apart without us. He's like, we're going to go off to college soon. So, the department's your dad and the department's going to have to learn how to handle stuff without us. Because that's an interesting thing that kind of pops up later on in the episode. It's what's going to happen when Scott and them graduate? It's I doubt this whole supernatural angle in Beacon Hills is just going to go away. I'm sure, the world, it's not just allocated to Beacon Hills. Beacon Hills kind of become, the beacon for other supernatural things. More specifically after season 3, in particular, the first half of the season, because they kind of draw what Allison, Scott, and Stiles did trying to trying to track down the Nemetat. When they were trying to track it down, they ended up doing that spell, and it put a blackened spot on their hearts. So they basically ended up turning Beacon Hills into an actual beacon, hence the name. But I think it was already kind of one, it attracted a lot of supernaturals. Anyway, not the point. And then the fact it came up to a conversation between Mason, Liam, and Hayden, kind of what's going to happen when they leave? And then, Liam, I'll be Alpha. And they're like, oh, you? And he's like, what, you don't think I could do it? Hayden's like, no, I didn't say that. It's kind of interesting because it does seem like they are setting those three up to kind of be the new go-to team. It's obviously Liam and Mason are kind of Scott and Stiles. And Hayden, you can look at her either really look at her as a combination of got that kick-assness of both, Lydia and Allison, but also maintaining that supernatural aspect like Lydia. But the premise of this episode, I'm just been kind of all over the place. I do apologize for that. It's the fact of the matter is there's this little kid named Alex who basically Hayden and Liam were on a date. The car rolls up and it's okay, the windshield and stuff is smashed in, the door's going and everything. All we find is a little kid in there terrified saying don't let them take me. Scott looks into his mind, but he's things are kind of weird because it's he can't quite see what was wrong. He can't find out what happened to the kid's parents. It's almost there's gaps in his memories almost. And hence the thing of this episode, we end up finding out. I really like the premise of this enemy. It's these enemies known as Ghost Riders. They're kind of part of this thing called the Wild Hunt. Essentially, they hunt souls. That basically, it's not even just shooting at you either. I was wondering is it just them or is it the guns they shoot? Maybe it's a combination. But the moment moment you look at them, they take you. Because it's the moment you lay eyes on them, you're forever lost. Because essentially, these things wipe you out of existence. It happened to Alex and his family. Because you had Stiles and Scott going to his house, and it's the house kind of looks a little run down from the outside. But then you get to Alex's room, it actually looks like a legit room, and it's taken care of. It's furnished and everything, but it looks completely different from the rest of the house. No one else has lived there because it's reality kind of shifts and kind of makes up. It's oh yeah, all of reality kind of compensates for the fact is that they no longer exist or whatever. And in the moment stuff disappeared in Alex's room, it's oh, Alex is next. So. And also, it seems this is all connected to some kind of the compasses going haywire. Like apparently, like when you look at a compass, like obviously the compasses won't really point true north. I think the way Mason was describing it is like they point magnetic north, and they were just acting haywire, and it ended up leading Liam and Mason to the house with Scott and Stiles. But then you have like the most depressing aspect of this episode being the fact is that Stiles is the one that gets forgotten because he's walking up to he's asking Lydia's mom and everything. He's like, "Yo, what's going on? Where's my dad and everything?" She's like, "Okay, it's like, oh, your dad." She's like, "The sheriff," and it's just like, "Oh, okay, just wait here." He goes ask Liam, Mason, and he's like, "Oh, you're good," because he thought they're in the next target. So they're like, "Do we know you?" And then he goes to his dad, and it's like his dad doesn't recognize him. Calls Scott. Scott's like, "Who are you?" And it's like, oh, dude. Everyone has literally forgotten him except for Lydia. Lydia comes to chase after him. It's like, Stiles, what's going on? It's like everyone's kind of forgotten you. Then he starts to being able to see them because it seems like it's not just one. Because Alex did say they, but the way they were making it seem like it might have just been one. But it seems like there are multiple because there was like 3 or 4 that came after Stiles. And Stiles was about to run, but he's like, "There's no way I can do this. It's too late." And Lydia's like, "No, we've got to run." And he was like, "Just don't forget me." She's like, "I won't," but he's like, "You will, but try your best to try and remember me some shape or form." And they take him. And then Lydia was telling herself, I gotta remember. Next day comes, she's like, I was supposed to do something. And then Scott's like, "Do what?" And she's like, "I don't remember." And it's like, oh, it's so heartbreaking, dude. These are probably like the deadliest opponents that they've ever come across yet. Holy crap. A thing that could literally wipe you out of existence. How do you fight that? Especially considering you don't remember they exist. Because Scott didn't even remember like the moment like him and it seems like there is like a little period of time before it actually kicks in because it had been a little bit of period of time before Stiles had met one of the Ghost Riders face to face, and then like because up to that point like before him and Scott split up, they were like. Obviously Scott knew him and everything because apparently Stiles had something to tell him, but he was like, Scott was like, "Just tell me when it's all said and done." Part of me was thinking like, okay, maybe Lydia will remember because she's kind of tapped into this. Maybe being a banshee because she's kind of like she's connected to all the supernatural, so maybe it won't work on her. But apparently it still does. But I feel like out of anyone, Lydia will be the one to kind of tap into it the most. I mean, maybe there's some part of her that can reach out to the great beyond or like whatever like plane of existence souls exist on because banshees are connected to death, but it's like even because technically having your existence wiped is kind of like death, but when the parents went missing, Lydia couldn't feel anything. She's like, if they were dead, I'd at least sense something, I would know something if they had died. So even banshees can't really sense it. So it's like, how do you fight something that you don't know exists? But it does kind of leave you with a feeling like there's something missing, but it's probably like an itch you just can't scratch. It's like it's on the tip of your tongue, but you can never quite grasp it. So maybe it's something like that. I don't know. It's just a crazy enemy to kind of get them going up against. Like I said, because the whole premise of this season is kind of setting up like, hey, obviously this being the final season, which I'm gonna get to that in a little bit and everything, but it's like it's setting up the fact that we're moving on, and it's kind of like it because everyone's kind of looking like, okay, Stiles is just trying to find meaning in something, just kind of find one great mystery. It's kind of like the proof that they're still needed, because even when after Sheriff Stilinski called them about Alex. You had Stiles being like, they still need us, kind of being super excited and everything. But it's such an interesting thing when it came to the whole Stiles thing, because it's like, I love how they replayed it to kind of point it out too. It's like, oh yeah, we were hinting at the fact that Stiles was disappearing. He had been taking the entire episode. It's like Stiles has it rough, dude. I mean, I guess being like kind of technically the only human in Scott's pack. I mean, I don't know if Mason's kind of... I'd go argue say Mason is, but for the longest time, he was the only... Well, him and Allison. But Allison kind of was a special case because she was kind of not a normal human. She is a hunter. She's part of the famous Argent family, so... But, the fact of the matter is, like, back in season 3 being possessed by Nugitsune, then the whole situation with Theo last season kind of, like, turning Scott against him, making Stiles and feel like he was a murderer, that he had to keep this secret, just being manipulated and everything. And so I did see kind of a spoiler. I don't. It's kind of a spoiler. I did see the actor who plays Theo. Like there was like a red carpet event, for them being there, kind of being like, okay, like our final premiere and stuff like that. So, and I ended up seeing the actor who plays Theo with them. I'm like, oh, so does that mean Theo's popping up too? I'm sure this is going to be the season. I'm very interested to see like whether everyone's coming back, whether someone like Isaac, because like Isaac kind of disappeared after season three's finale, after Allison died and everything. So will he come back? What about Kira? Like, because we already know Kira's situation. She's with the skinwalkers and everything. So I'm sure she's, Arden Cho's going to come back at some point. Obviously, they took her out of the main casting because it's like, she's kind of off right now. So maybe she'll kind of pop up in a guest star and thing. What about Tyler Hoechlin? Because I know he's Superman, but it's a small part. So maybe he'll pop up. Because I remember reading something that was going to say like he was going to pop up in the second half of season 5, but he never did. So I'm like, like I said, it's the final season and everything. And kind of going along with that, like, I will say I am sad. There is a part of me that's sad. Teen Wolf is literally one of those few shows that I can say I've watched since it first aired on TV. The moment I first saw previews of it, what was it, back in 2011? Was that, no, or was it 2012? I don't remember. I think it was like 2011 when the show first started, and I was like super infatuated with it. I was like, I love this show. It's amazing. It's like, oh, it's kind of like the movie, but it's like, obviously it's got its own style to it. It's got this mystery, this dark, supernatural element to it. It takes this show, the movie, and then builds upon it, kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn does or whatever. So I've just been in love with the show since the very first season, and I'm sad to see it go, but at the same time, like I said, it's one of I've always said it, I'll say it again. I always appreciate when a show leaves of its own fruition, and whether it's because even if it's like MTV was like, okay, this is your last season, at the very least, they're giving them an opportunity to kind of clear the borders, like, hey, give it a proper ending. It's not one of like, oh, and you're canceled. It's like, oh, you thought you're gonna get renewed for another season. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. It's like, sadly, we decided you won't be renewed for another season, and you kind of leave off on a cliffhanger. So what I'm very interested in, kind of getting to it and everything, like besides all the cast members, or any past cast members return, what I'm also curious about is to see how will they set up season 6's story. Will it be like season 3 or more like season 4? Because from what I ended up reading a while back is that season 6 is going to be split up into 2 seasons, like season 3 and 5 was. But the question is it going to be like season 3 where there's like each season was like its own story, like they were obviously connected, but they were still separate stories, where it's like the first half of season 3, 3A was about Deucalion and the Druid, and then the second half of it was 3B was about the Nogitsune possessing Stiles and everything. And in season 5, it was all an overarching connecting story about Theo, the Dread Doctors, and the Beast. That's what that whole season was, one complete story, both halves of it. So I'm curious at which where they're going to do that. Now, with the way they're setting things up, it makes me think it might possibly be like season 3, where it's 2 different stories. I could be wrong. Obviously, they're connected and everything, but 2 separate stories, because there was that thing that woke up at the end of season 5 that it's not the leading antagonist. I thought that's what it was going to be. Not unless these Ghost Riders are kind of a precursor to that happening, maybe they're kind of the beginning parts. Maybe it will like be like 5, and it's like, start off with the Ghost Rider, but eventually transforming until we get to that thing. So the Nazi werewolf thing that the Dread Doctors were using to kind of keep themselves young and everything. So I'm very curious to see what they do about that. I'm super glad to have Teen Wolf back, even if it's the final season. Like I said, I'm happy and sad at the same time. I want to see the show go out with a bang, and it's already starting off so well. With the fact of the matter is this whole Ghost Rider situation. And it's like, how do you legitimately, how do you fight something like this? So very curious to see where it goes next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Aftermath, which I will just bluntly say, I will argue that this might be the most confusing episode ever. Let's break everything down. Let's start off with Josh and the kids. So basically, they split up. Like Josh goes back outside to go get Dana, and he takes some respirator mask with him. Which Matt is like, "Holy crap, we're trapped in here." Brianna's like, "Okay, that's not. We need to." He's like, "We need to get out of here." She's like, "No, we don't." He's like, "You see that? It's a vent that's kind of cycling in air from the outside, meaning the air outside is poisonous. So we're kind of screwed in here." And he's trying to rush him to get out, but Brianna's like, "No, don't be stupid." And even at one point, punching him in the face. It's like, "Don't act." Think, which in his mind, he's like, okay, I need to burn all this stuff, basically reduce the oxygen levels so that the doors will open and everything. So, but tying in with that is the whole situation with Dana and everything. Like, she's panicking, and like Josh is trying to put the mask on her, and then she's freaking out. Like, she's like she's like, her claustrophobia kind of kicked in and everything, which I didn't know claustrophobia would, like, I mean, it is a tight space because your face is like pressed against something and you're just kind of trapped and everything, but I've never heard of that before. It's like, I know you hate tight spaces, but I never really recognized that as being like a tight space. But it's like, in retrospect, it's kind of like, oh, it kind of makes sense and everything. So it is kind of a tight restricting area. I guess it depends on how severe your claustrophobia is. I'm sure there's, like with anything, there's varying ranges, because it's like, the same thing with like fear of heights and stuff like that. Maybe there's a certain point of height that you're like not bothered by, but then after you cross that threshold, you kind of lose your mind. It's like, oh, maybe your threshold is like 6 feet in the air, and then you get queasy all of a sudden. And it's like 5 feet, no problem. The moment you hit 6, you kind of lose your mind. So I'm thinking maybe it's something like that. But the fact is, Josh is trying to keep her calm and everything, and you had that thing, the dragon thing, which apparently are called Quetzalcoatl's. I didn't catch that before, which is very interesting. Like, I do know that is a Native American thing. Which, I mean, it's kind of like where they're kind of pulling a lot of this lore from, like what they're, I know Skinwalkers was one, that was kind of interesting, but just, because to me, when I hear Quetzalcoatl, like the only thing that comes to my mind, I mean, I know I'm literally pronouncing it like 3 different ways every time I've said it, but literally first thing that comes to my mind is Final Fantasy VIII. It's like one of the summons you get in the game. It's like actually one of the first summons you get in the game, but it's just, that always stuck to my mind. And because for the longest time, I never knew how to pronounce it until I started hearing people saying it. I was like, oh, Quetzalcoatl. So, see what I mean? I literally say it a different time every time I say it. But those dragging looking things, and apparently, like, it ended up, like, kind of dying from the air and everything, which kind of got Josh thinking about something, too. Like, it happens later on in the episode, but he starts thinking maybe those things aren't as bad as they thought they were, because it's kind of like, they've never actually hurt anyone. They've only, like, yeah, it took a horse just for sustenance, but it never actually ate someone. And maybe it's actually a guide showing you which way to go, because he's like, oh, the direction it ended up dying in is kind of telling us to go east. They were kind of already told to go east anyway. So maybe it's like, oh, follow them and everything, which I'll get to that later on. But what I also want to think about is, like, the fact is, Dana had a dream about her mom. She was dead certain. She's like, yeah, mom's still alive. And Brianna's like, no, she's not. Mom was trapped up in the volcano. She's like, it's a defense mechanism. You're trying to make it seem like it's okay, but I can't handle this. Like, so much is happening, and I'm barely holding on. I can't have you sitting here talking about mom. She's like, I have hope and everything. She's like, hope is kind of useless. And then Dana goes, well, the fact of the matter is the entire, when the Skinwalker took you and everything, I kept telling everyone that you were still alive, that I felt it and everything. So can't argue with that, what she did. But the fact is, she was so specific in that dream. She was like, yeah, I had a dream that mom was trapped in a cave and that she was trying to get out and make her way back to her. I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? Okay, I was like, okay, did something that Monk do kind of seep into you? Because of the whole situation of Karen literally trying to get out of the cave, running into that guy named Colin. He's kind of like a volcanist. He studies volcanoes and stuff like that. He helps her out and everything. The person he was there with ended up dying. I thought he was with the 2 Nimrods, the dude and the lady that killed Martin last episode, that Josh kind of sent them off to kind of get buried under everything. I thought that was what was going to happen, but apparently he's not connecting them, just some other people. And apparently, like, he had a medical bag and everything, and Karen gave him morphine, and then, like, the creepy part of everything, kind of snapping his leg back into place, like 2 different, like, snapping it 2 ways to kind of get his leg set back in place. But goes on, And they end up having to stop because it's like, he can only go so far. So Karen's like, okay, I'm going to handle this on my own. And he starts screaming out, don't go, because he was afraid she was going to leave him and everything. Goes further in, but then it kind of caves in a little bit, so she has to come back, and he's kind of losing his damn mind, being like, you're a soldier, you'll never see your kids again, you'll never get out of here, I've accepted it, you have it. I'm like, what the hell? Did he lose his damn mind? Did he get possessed? Did he turn into a feverhead or something? I was like, why is he acting like that? And then things got super weird, because things start spiraling out of control and everything. Then Karen starts touching paintings on the wall, and then she's seeing stuff like the whole situation when Dana holding on to Martin's body last episode, the sun, seeing the Quetzalcoatl, just like there was like a lot of stuff that was just like, okay, this isn't making any sense. Is that wait, what's going on here? And then she starts seeing that lady, the lady she killed a couple episodes back, the one Dana got super pissed about. It was like the fact is that she thought they did something to Dana, so she got super pissed and started killing them all. The lady that she killed last, the one she unloaded into, basically handed her like one of the bullets or whatever, and it's just like, okay, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden, like, Karen's looking down and she sees herself laying down unconscious, still trapped in the rocks. I was like, wait, what? And then snap, it was all a dream. So wait, so did Dana tap into her mom's dream or something? I mean, that's where that whole thing that she was trying to tap into last episode to stop the volcano and everything, like, you know, maybe that area is special in some regard, and maybe it connected them that way. I'm not sure what that means. All I know is that, you know, Karen came out of that situation different. I was like, part of me was like, okay, wait, are they still dreaming? And then they decide, like, okay, you know what we need to do? Just go home. I'm like, oh, okay, you're going home. And then all of a sudden we see them back home. I'm like, wait, what? How? You left home a couple days, like episodes ago. Were they just skipping ahead? It's like, oh yeah, all that driving is like all that stuff you went through. Let's just skip it and just you're back home. And it's like, wait, what? Because Dana had thrown out something interesting in this episode. She had thrown out the fact that something's wrong with time. And then Brianna's like, wait, what do you mean? She's like, well, take you and me, for example. When it came to Martin and Devin, respectively, it's like, Devin knew you from maybe a week or something like that, yet he was so in love with you. And the whole thing with me and Martin, we knew each other for maybe 3 days, but yet he was kind of like we're willing to spend the rest of our lives together. It's like something's a little weird there. It's like, yeah, sure, you're quick to fall in love and be infatuated with someone, but that fast? I mean, because you did kind of, like I said, I chalked it, like last episode, the whole thing was kind of like, oh yeah, it's the end of the world, so you kind of latch on to people a little quickly, but still, that, in retrospect, it is kind of like, that is quickly. And even brings up the fact is, Brianna, how long ago was it you were taken by the skinwalker? And she's like, 3 months. And she's like, yeah, for me it's like, I feel like it's 10 days. So it's kind of like, is time kind of fucked up? Is that what that might have been? Is that kind of like them just kind of jumping ahead? Was that just kind of like let's skip over to driving, or was that a time thing? Like, maybe time is legitimately all screwed up and everything. Like, I feel like they wouldn't throw that out there for nothing. I feel like there is probably some weight to that. I mean, I don't know. It's just weird to me that they went back home. That's why I'm kind of like, is that a dream? Then they end up finding out, oh, we can't go back home. The house is a little destroyed, but also our farmland has been salted, so it's not like we can grow anything here. Karen's kind of like, hey, we got tomorrow. Like, our home is in the past. We just got to keep moving forward and everything. And it's like, okay, this is weird. And then there's that lady that she knows, her husband kind of turned into a feverhead. And rather than Karen handling it or helping her, it's just like, here, hands her a gun. It's like, you kind of take care of it. We're about to leave. And it's like, really? Like, wait, what? It's like, are you not trying to get involved or anything like that? Even though it seems like people you know, I'm just like confused. It seems like you're actually becoming a little cold-hearted. So does this mean from now on you're going to be cold-hearted towards people, or is it just kind of a situation of like, this whole place isn't worth us getting involved in or whatnot? I don't know. It left me extremely, extremely confused as to what that whole situation was. And like I said, they're following the Quetzalcoatl, kind of being like, oh, kind of letting them be their guides and everything. So it's just a little confusing. I don't know how to interpret all of this. It's just, I don't think there is any interpreting. Like I brought it up before, maybe I should not try to think too much about where things are heading, what things necessarily mean. The show will explain things when it comes to it. I mean, maybe it won't. Maybe one of those things is like, the world doesn't make any sense. Accept it. And so I need to do that, but I have a hard time accepting it. So I guess we'll just really have to wait till the next episode to kind of really find out like what that's all about. Maybe, I don't know. And then there was that whole thing about Karen, that bullet she ended up getting, and ended up finding out it was a rock. So maybe like, because Karen saw it as a bullet because she was still kind of like in that dazed state. But then like when she kind of learned to kind of let go of the past and kind of move forward and everything, maybe she saw it as a rock because she had been holding on to that because it's like, it didn't, like the whole situation was probably still bothering her. Plus she was dealing with Sally's death and everything. So maybe that's what it was. Or maybe the rock is important. The reason why it went from a bullet to a rock, maybe that's supposed to signify something. I don't know. Is Jane really dead? I don't think she is. I mean, maybe she is. I mean, because Karen's like, yeah, she stepped on in that area, and it's like, yeah, she died, but it's kind of like, it seems like she wanted to. The monk, is he going, like, I'm sorry. It's just, it's so much. The show's so damn confusing, but, I'm just gonna leave it there. That's all I wanted to talk about. But, till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.